Are you ready there? Because we are broadcasting right now.
Oh, yeah, what's up? I just broke my wife's lamp, I think. So,
Okay, cool. Well, just to let everyone know who might be watching this, I'm Raul Ramirez. I'm the director for Catch Wrestling Alliance, and I'm talking to John Strickland, who is the head coach for American Hook Wrestling. And I really wanted to talk to him because I think there's a lot that people don't know about the American history of catch wrestling, and so I want to bring the expert on to educate everyone about this great history, especially if you're American. This is like catch wrestling in particular was a great part of our history that a lot of people don't know. That's really affected all kinds of sports and even some. I found out it even affected the way sponsorship deals are done nowadays, like with how Frank Gotch actually innovated with that. But I want to get into the nitty gritty with Mr. John Strickland. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
yeah, thanks for having me on. So, I don't know about the expert part, but so
All right. So, well, why don't we kind of get into it? I mean, what can you tell us regarding like even some of the early days? Because like we're having the Frank Gotch World Catch Wrestling Tournament coming up. So, can you tell us a little bit about like cause that lineage and how it developed and just how rough things were in the United States with regards to wrestling?
well, Gotch, trained by Farmer Burns, and that's I think pretty common knowledge. One of the things that I think a lot of times we hit those highlight moments. I mean those italicized moments in the book, like Gotch trained by Farmer Burns. The thing is that with most of these guys that you find out when we say, well, did he wrestle amateur? A lot of times they'll say, no, they didn't. But we have to keep in mind that high school and wrestling, I don't even know high school wrestling was invented yet, and then collegiate wrestling wasn't around. So they still had a form of amateur catch as catch can, which that's what modern folk style and freestyle developed out of. But I think it was probably when you watched it, it was very similar to what you do today in catch as catch can, except they weren't a fall by the submission; they were winning the falls by the pins. But Frank already had a wrestling base; he was already probably a pretty good wrestler. And then, of course, Farmer Burns, modified him into a race car. Built him into the ended up becoming a world champion. And that kind of thing. And for Farmer himself, it was debated for years. I remember a certain person had said they thought Farmer just made the stuff up on his own, which a little bit claim, that like, wow, you'd really have to have a lot of time and that kind of thing. So then it turns out, no, he learned from having a little bit of brain freeze here this evening. Farmer was taught by
Connors.
Yeah, Tom Connors. Good, thank you. Tom Connors from Ireland, who had went over some in Wigan, and then came over and and wrestled. And in wrestling, then you got to consider. I mean, we're talking about when Gotch is wrestling. It's almost still the old Wild West. My memory serves me correctly, Geronimo wasn't captured by U.S. forces until like 1908 or something, Very rugged landscape, prairie, pioneer life, very tough lifestyles. Probably, one of the things that a lot of people don't, fail to see is it was, just a lot different. It wasn't as much sporting, I don't think, as it was let's get down and let's see who's really the better man. That's why you didn't have points and you didn't have, a lot of these things. And obviously, those early days is what, going in from the late 1800s and early 1900s is what developed into the athletic shows. So would travel. The United States is somewhat because wrestling and boxing both were professional sports. And it was decades later that they had an amateur version for the sports organized. Other way around, it's amateur, and then so I always thought that was a pretty neat concept.
Oh yeah, I think that was real interesting too. Like I was reading too that basically, well, like in the case of Frank Gotch, he would go with Farmer Burns to different like mining sites or and yeah, it wasn't like an amateur thing. It's like they would go and to where any tough guy was, or people who thought they were tough, and they would place bets on whether or not they could beat Gotch. He was a pseudonym at the time, but yeah, there was no kind of like amateur tournament going on. It was real matches, no points. Whoever was the best, whoever could beat the other guy was the real winner.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some professional wrestlers, and in my lifetime that were going back to the 70s, and I'm pretty old. I was born in 71, but we hear them, every time you hear somebody make a claim about, oh, this guy was on the Carney show, this guy was on the athletic show. I remember Pops, Billy Wicks had a huge issue with a very famous professional wrestler out of Memphis, Tennessee. I won't mention his name, but he had made a claim that what they did is they had a 3-sided ring, and the back of it would be backed up to the Carnival tent. And if a wrestler had a hard time, he'd signal, and people would come behind that tent and hit the guy in the back of the head with a club and knock him out. And boy, when Pops heard that, he went hysterical. He said, "You got that off watching Abbott and Costello show." You saw that? Because it never happened, I mean. And then exactly, and that's what it turned out. It was like, oh yeah, but I figured, because yeah, well, I mean, we still as a society try to take our cues a lot of time from action movies and stuff, but or the way we're going to approach life. But yeah, so the athletic shows were a lot of shooting. That often there were works. The works though were between other wrestlers. The shoots were with the crowd. So there was a work on the athletic show. It was between Billy and somebody else that worked for that athletic show. To set the sticks up and that kind of thing. A lot of times he used his buddy Greg Peterson, because Greg Peterson was small, about 5'6", 140 pounds. And if he can last 15, 20 minutes with that guy, tough guy, I've been drinking enough tonight to get my courage up, I can go down there and whip him. And that's how it worked. It was a good hustle. People lost money. I saw another professional wrestler said, well, the guys on athletic shows, they didn't wrestle good competition. It's the guys in professional wrestling who didn't wrestle competition. Work matches that were predetermined, with big high flying suplexes and things that just wouldn't happen in actual wrestling. I think that, though, I mean, I know Dick Cardinal wrestled Glenn Denton for a territory dispute with August Sepp. Glenn Denton was a knowledgeable out of California. And he was in the Northern California area. This was for, I think, the area of Oregon at the time. Dick is from Washington State with Ben Sherman and August Sepp. So that certainly was it. Billy Wicks, the Carnivals, he was on. They were traveling the Midwest, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, those areas, which are still hotbeds for American amateur wrestling talent. Both of those guys, Dick and Pops, both had told me they would wrestle. They would, every now and then, you get an All-American wrestler from college. I think the University of Washington, it was an All-American, and he ended up tearing the kid's shoulder. And then, of course, they would, wrestle guys, within their gyms. It's funny because I was telling someone the other day, he worked for Henry Colin, and Dick worked for August Sepp, you didn't go to their gym and sign up like you would in our time. Gym says, hey, you want to learn? Okay, you know, sign here, pay your money, let's go. You had to be invited in. You already had to have ability. Jake got invited into August 7th gym by winning a tournament on the Pacific Northwest where he won the tournament, and the prize for that tournament was he got to wrestle with Robin Reed, and Robin Reed was a fantastic Olympian who later also became famous again for getting by John Pesek.
Okay, well, Robin Reed is still listed as by Mike Chapman as one of the all-time best American wrestlers ever.
He's probably a little bit forgotten too when we start talking about who was the greatest. You know, we talk Gable, we'll talk, you know, John Smith or what have you not, and guys were great, and you already believe we can make arguments for them as well. I mean, but yeah, I think that Robin was, 135 pounds, and he was pinning. I mean, that's pretty strong. You know, and to know what happened to him when he tangled with John Pesek, which was a disaster, and he said it in his own words in his book. And he reported that to us as the press that Pesek destroyed him. You know, and sometimes they would have these matches of I'm friends with Jeff Pesek, who is John's grandson. You know, you hear the stories of there was a wrestler from the University of Nebraska who used to come over and work out with John, and you know, I think we all have that vision. He's in the bar and it's rough and tough, and of course Pesek just kicked the crap out of the kid. And you know, I think in the United States, you know, the level of the very knowledgeable hookers and stuff started fading out by the 60s and 70s. You know, the professional wrestling. You still had Lou Thez out there, maybe one or two other guys, but most guys had gotten out. Even Billy Wicks had officially retired by 71. And he wasn't even wrestling but part-time anyway then. He wrestled every now and then even going back to the 60s because he was working law enforcement, you know, where he ended up being a bodyguard for Judge Preston Battle. So, yeah, you know, that's the athletic shows. Certainly they had some works. It went like professional wrestling, which is all work. And, you know, they had their shoots publicly in front of people and skills publicly in front of people to see. You know, and I know a lot of people shot behind closed doors. I mean, wrestling behind closed doors, I don't know, 1,000 matches, probably. I mean, wrestle with somebody in the gym or roll somebody in the gym. Do I count that as a competition win? I might as well.
No.
Jack up my numbers now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, you'd have tons of wins then, right?
Oh yeah, I'm the toughest person in my house still, even at 46. Can't beat me. My 5-year-old can't beat me. My 2-year-old can't.
All right. Well, yeah. You have a good point there. That the thing is like a lot of the Americans were really wrestling good competition, even if they were competing against amateurs. And I think we do have to kind of let people know that. I mean, regarding this terminology, it was where it's like the pro wrestler was considered the actual like person who knew knew real catch wrestling, knew the submission holds and this, and then the amateur was like, say, someone who was doing collegiate, you know, folk style wrestling, and they knew that system. But either way, like how we see even with like Curran Jacobs, our good friend, you know, that amateur base produces a strong wrestler. So the guys yeah, the catch wrestlers of that time, when they were doing these public matches at the AT show, um, they were facing really high quality opponents. So yeah, it wasn't just always like some guy who just off the street who thinks they can fight.
Yeah, and a lot of times you got guys that were, you would have got quality wrestlers, and then there was the guys that would barnstorm the lookout for, Fred Grubmeyer would come to mind. And Fred Grubmeyer's the one we read about, but there were tons of Fred Grubmeyers, tons of them running around the country trying to hustle the carny who's trying to run a hustle. Pretty much take Fred Grubmeyer around the world and probably spank the crap out of anybody. The a la Cornstalk. One of the things they did take on, they did take on tough guys. They take on guys who thought, hey, they're up to the challenge. Pretty simple thing to do. As I was able to do that for a year in a local club here, bar, and tavern. Wrestle people for money, and every now and then I get somebody new. So every now and then I get a jiu-jitsu person or somebody been trained military and something. I made enough money in a year to pay like all my utilities, like my power, and so it was worth it. And I'm building still. If you ever come to my house, it's just right across it's end of my street and down to the left about 75 yards. So it's right near me. But anyway, those guys, yeah, and there every now and then you'd have a guy on the Carnival. It was funny because Billy had told me, and Dick had said the same thing. They had guys that, like you would anywhere, you had guys that worked for whether it be August or for Henry, better guys, and some guys that weren't. Bring in a guy, some of the guys they bring in, I was told about a guy that came in and he had a good amateur background. They taught him one or two holds and they put him out there, and were really the difference. A lot of the amateur guys didn't know him, and they got beat because of it. And they pinning in the sport, but in the athletic shows in America, pinning was kind of frowned upon by most of the carnies because you could, where the fans were sitting, you could have an argument, where, oh no, his shoulder went quite down. You can have that argument. I see it today in the NCAA when I watch NCAA around college wrestling or high school wrestling. I don't think his shoulder was down, or that guy's shoulder's down. Why are you pinning? He screams out, he gives. And there's no denying that. I mean, he lost. He just told the world he lost. He told, it's a little bit, it's a little different. And I mean, Dick used to tell me all the time, he'd grab a guy and starts like, there's that. If you did that, you lost. Or uncle or any of those things. They didn't tap out. They would verbally submit. One night and the crowd was real loud and he goes, I can't hear you. You're going to, unfortunately, son, I'm going to have to crank you harder because you're going to have to yell louder. So they make sure that they know you lost. And kids start screaming out. This woman, he told me, sitting there at ringside, came out and said, that's fake wrestling. I've got a TV. I've watched pro wrestling.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What do you say to that? And of course, a lot of people, some of the better American wrestlers never were in pro wrestling. I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think though too? I mean, how you mentioned that these guys usually had to win by submitting the person, but yet, we don't necessarily see, even though there's like an emphasis on submitting the person, we don't necessarily see them going onto their backs to get the submission, right? We still see strong wrestling fundamentals with these wrestlers, right? I mean, it's about the control.
I mean, one of the tricks that seems to be kind of common between Sepp's group and Colin's group is that if they had a strong amateur, a lot of times they would they'd walk out, drop down, he jumps on his back, goes behind him, and they double wrist lock him. or they snatch up a toe hold. And a lot of times they hit that double wrist lock, they'll hit that outside grate. They're not on their blades, but they're on their side a little bit. They do that. But no, they wouldn't lay on their back and fish for submission holds. No.
Yes, so those wrestling fundamentals were like always there. There was, so again, it's like, I mean, truly, like, it's my opinion too. I mean, I think it is better to control the person and then you can get your submission. So it seems that's really consistent with the catch wrestling, even though the Americans were having to submit their opponents a lot.
Yeah, that's the thing about a wrist lock, you know, like if I'm wrestling and controlling a guy for a half Nelson, if I don't keep him in a certain position, it's hard to keep that half if he stands up and moves around. Because one of the beauties of the double wrist lock is that you wrestle and you get that hold, and that hold, once you come back to your feet, you can still have that hold on the guy. You can have that hold on the bottom, you can have that hold on top, you can have that hold to the side, you can have that hold throwing a guy, you can have that hold as you submit a guy. So it was that's one of the things that I was a little well versed, and you know, and I think I told you, you touched on the Seps family. That's a very common Dick Cardinal. When he first started, I would send Dick DVDs of myself and my classes and let him give me feedback on them. And he said, you remind me a lot of August with your guys because you're letting them start on top and get behind you, then you're hooking them. And that's what August used to like to do with guys. I said, well, some of it's, because I don't, if I got my students, I don't know, it's not fair but to manage position if we start on the ground. Recommend guys always, if you can, start on bottom for that position because you're going to get better from there. Because if somebody can't keep you there and ride you, they're going to have a hard time beating you. But it teaches you to get out and teaches you to hook, teaches you to escape. And then also too, man, if you're being an old guy, whatever, and you just want to be a little bit lazy, you can wrestle from there. But you better have a good base. You better really build to have a strong defense and strong rep position that you won't be turned to your blades or get hooked from there. That's crucial. That's crucial. So
it goes back to the actual wrestling part of the title, catch wrestling, right? It's in there.
Yeah, and this is a different. It's anytime I see somebody new to the sport or somebody's asking questions, you got to test as a teacher. So, well, you got some of it right, but you didn't. They'll start talking about what they think it is, and then they'll leave out some part. I'm like, oh, that's actually a pretty big part. Whether it be the wrestling or the hooking. I think one of the big misconceptions in America is, I think one of the big misconceptions worldwide is that catch wrestling is just 1,000 holds, 1,000 holds, 1,000 holds. It is for a bunch of angles, but you has two arms, and arms are identical. One's a left, one's a right. Legs are identical. Neck. What else do you submit? My arms got three major joint areas: the wrist, elbow, and shoulder. My knees, ankle, knee, and hip. My neck has got to be turned to a side before it can get submitted. It's natural. I can do this all day. If I turn my head to the side and try to bend it, I get a front face like myself, So the mechanics of those things are more important than, how do you do this hold, and how you do this hold, and how you do this hold. Once you understand those mechanics, they just kind of fall in your lap. But I think that, and I tell guys all the time, it's not the better you're going to be. But when I use the word no, I mean, when I use the word no as it's like anything. Let's decide on what the definition of no is first, so we're on the same page. No, that means it 100% or darn close. Not like, oh, you scored 75%. Well, no, you still don't know it. You know a little bit, but you still have a good bit to learn there. So it's understanding that, Pops always say, why would you throw away a submission hold on somebody? Well, I couldn't submit him. How to use it? He goes, all of a sudden, is his skeleton built differently? I don't care what his flexibility is. He's still a human. You just got to change your angle, your leverage, and maybe now the position you have him in. Maybe you need to move him around a little bit and then hit him, but stay with it, that kind of thing. So, but I think that's a pretty common thing. And then you don't see, where you see in amateur wrestling, a constant explosion, a constant speed game, and it's changed a lot. I had a conversation last night with one of my guys that wrestled at Syracuse, and how his coach at Syracuse was Gene Mills, and how in 1979 Gene Mills was wrestling in the NCAAs, and it was kind of cool to hear the guy on CBS say, hey, he's a mat wrestler, he wants to keep it down. Very often on the college level anymore, everybody's like, get back to your feet, get back to your feet. That's how, from amateurs, I'd always been told. And with the Pops, it's like, stay down. It's like, quit standing up. All right.
Oh yeah, no, that's so true, because a lot of times, people will want to just stand back up, even during catch wrestling practice or something, but they don't realize that it's like once you've stood back up, you guys are neutral again. So you could have done a reversal instead and still kept it down and try to set up something else.
Now we got to start over again. And you got to start over. And the thing of it is, you're not likely going to submit him standing, and you're not going to pin him standing. So now you've come right back here again, and now you got to come back down here again. If you got two wrestlers, both wrestlers, what is their object? To get the other one down. For a boxer, you don't have that same. You got one trying to get a guy down. Boxer doesn't want to go down. So if you're not getting 2 points off that takedown, takedowns are certainly important, but a lot of people use an amateur mindset, and then they get into catch and they bring it into catch with them, thinking that's what they need to really focus on, and it's not. Because here's the thing, you got two catch wrestlers going against each other. Now, the match is not going to be one standing up, okay? This is just math. This is just math. The math isn't, it's consistent. Verse, and so if this guy can't take this guy over here down, take down, so be it. I have to go down anyway to win. I don't see many guys that get a takedown and directly pin a guy. If somebody took down one of my guys off a shot straight into a pin or a throw straight into a pin, I failed him as a coach. Here it's on the middle school level. It's just not, shouldn't happen. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, we saw a pretty good example of being able to get out when someone gets a takedown. Like remember the match between Chris Morales and Nicholas Kajia at the last year's Frank Gotch. It seemed like that takedown, like the outside trip that Kajia was doing, I've seen some other footage of him, and that seems like his bread and butter move, and he is able to keep people down. But Chris Morales is a ever improving young catch wrestler, and it wasn't able to keep Chris down. It was actually his way of escaping to try to regain control of the match.
So both really nice people. I thought Nick worked way too hard up top. Doing those down and keep working to get Chris down and keep doing this, and I thought he used a unnecessary amount of energy when that thing hit the ground. You get a good mat wrestler, you wasted a few minutes standing up, you might have some problems if you cast, and where the ground is where it's going to take your energy, especially if somebody's riding, it's really going to start zapping your energy fast. And the funny thing is he had that that trip, and it seemed like he had the range of the entire mat with it.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Safe anywhere on the mat, he could hit it from anywhere on the mat. That's how I, it was like, wow, he's going to hit that from anywhere on the mat. And it's like, it was Henry Colin said, "You take me down, but you still got to beat me."
That's right.
And that actually was more of that wasn't just with Henry, really. That was very common in early American wrestling. A lot of people who have tried to, what do you call them, history revisionists, or people who tried to say, "Oh no, that's not," and they're just full of crap. I'd rather take it from people who were there than from a source who wasn't there but thinks, oh, they know something, and maybe lived on the other side of the damn Atlantic or Pacific, or they weren't born until 1983, whatever. So, yeah.
All right. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the future of catch wrestling, the future of American hook wrestling? Like, are you guys got anything coming up besides the Frank Gotch tournament? Or is Frank Gotch focusing on right now?
Well, yeah, I try to focus on that. I got one of my guys, unfortunately, is nursing an injury. Hopefully he's going to be ready to go, and I think he will be. But of course, with us, I've got my gym here, but then I've got, with my outreach program, I got guys in different parts of the country that will be there. So, and I got one of the guys, in Blair Dennett in Australia has got an MMA fight coming up. And unfortunately I can't attend that. And if I went to Australia, maybe with the current political fever in America, I might would stay there. Seek asylum,
Yeah, exactly.
But so then one of my guys who trains here, who came to me within this past year, had previous MMA fights. I get a lot of guys here who like, they don't even know what catch wrestling is. Well, I'm going to train you for MMA, you end up doing catch wrestling. So they end up doing that, and so I'm getting him ready. He's fighting in June. And then a friend of mine locally, we're talking about doing some in-house tournaments to let some bring guys to get some kind of competition outside of their gym without going. A lot of these grappling tournaments around here, like and stuff, they charge a ton of money, and how many divisions you're going to enter. You wait around all freaking day long, and then they give you, you win, you get a samurai sword. There's so many divisions, everybody's a winner, and guess, I don't know, man, that's not really kind of my a cup of tea, I guess you could say. And then, of course, this really goes against us. I do think catch guys I think for us to, and I've always thought this, and this even goes back to when Billy Wicks had a gym in North Carolina. I think it goes back to I still think BJJ is kind of the most popular submission grappling style in the U.S. world, and I still think it's you have to beat those guys, and which my guys have done real well with chokes, but we know how to defend them, and I had an argument at Reeves, which makes me think about a guy who has said to me, well, then if you're not using chokes, then you're not winning. And I just laughed and I said, you can't win with a wrist lock, you can't win with the toe holds, you can't win with arm bars, you can't win with neck cranks. It's like, well, then, son, you suck.
Yeah, yeah, I think people that say stuff like that, a lot of times maybe they don't know what a proper crossface feels like, or a proper face lock, or these other submission holds, and maybe that's the thing. It's they're definitely coming from a very like maybe foreign point of view from the way we've experienced or the way we've seen things. But I agree with you. To think that way with how we have our competitions without chokes, it doesn't mean that we don't.
I mean,
It doesn't mean we can't defend them. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Athletic shows, like if you had an armament or something like that, more of a sleeper type thing. Yeah, so I mean, I don't use a lot of throws. I'm standing. It doesn't, so, well, somebody, well, I use a lot of throws. Well, I use a lot of low. Used to use a lot of low singles. I don't like low singles. I don't care. Everybody's. There's so much wrestling. You can't do all of it. You can't. There's just no way. And be actually good at anything. You got to pick out what it is you like and what feels right for you, and get good at it. And if I had to leave a note right here on this notepad for my sons, if I was to the bucket tomorrow, I would say good at a few of your takedowns, get really great at a few takedowns, like excellent where you can hit them once you're in on anybody. Get really great at defending them. Have a few ways to ride somebody. Be really good at getting off bottom. That was what we felt really good to get off bottom. Know how to ride, and pick 3 or 4 submission holds and get really good. I mean, I one time didn't believe Pops when he said, a double wrist lock, a headlock, and a toe hold you can get anywhere when you're wrestling somebody. And he's right. Over time, I quit doing some of the submissions that I used to do because I had done jiu-jitsu and some shoot fighting before I came to it. And I kind of got away from some of those things. I might be doing somebody any good, but it's certainly not bread and butter stuff for me to go to.
Awesome. Can you, I know I'm keeping you up late, so how can people get a hold of you?
We're on Facebook, American Hook Wrestling, and then I'm on there too privately, or just me as an individual, right? So yeah, we got 3 of those now on Facebook. Really with social media, man, I shut down our website because get more people running through social media than websites. Kind of weird. Anyway, so they can get in touch with me that way. My email is carnywrestler2@gmail.com. So I'm on phone number.
Yeah, no problem. no need. Yeah, because they'll probably want to contact you through social media.
Some of the freaky people that this sport attracts, like we talked about.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
All right. Well, yeah. I hope everyone found this really interesting, and we want to try to give people the real picture, a real understanding of what catch wrestling is and was, and will continue to be. I mean, so you'll be able to see myself and John Strickland at the Frank Gotch World Catch Wrestling Tournament in Iowa this July 15th. So thank you, John, for talking to me tonight.
It's been a while, so I'm glad to be on there, and look forward to Iowa. And that was the people of Humboldt are very welcoming people, very salt of the earth people. Love their wrestling. Catch wrestling. If you're an American and you train in catch wrestling, or even if you're not an American, I mean, you get an opportunity to come, and it's the nostalgia. It's just like you're here. We're, Frank Gotch came from, and then where he beat Hackenschmidt. He trained for that match, and as we all know, this is a state that's devoted so much to wrestling. And of course, last year we had several people there, that were known in wrestling. And Mike told me he's trying to get brands there, and possibly Kevin Dresser, who's now taken over the head job at Iowa State. So if they can get out there, that's great. Whichever one of them's the nicest to me, I'll encourage my sons to take a scholarship there one day.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So yeah.
Well, Terry Brands was really, really kind to me. So when you guys eventually meet, I'm sure he'll be just as kind.
Yeah, he's. I've only seen stuff with him when he wrestled, and when he was wrestling in Iowa, and then in the Worlds and all that. And, I actually told a friend of mine, Pablo Massa, I wrestled with him in Iowa, does a lot of stuff with Gable. If you've seen any Den Gable instructionals, you've seen Pablo. He's usually his workout. And I was like, well, Terry's intense. He's an intense fella. He is just, but yeah. So where it goes, where again, everybody has their style. I try to remain calm, and some people, whatever works for you,
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, all.
All right. You too.